Chennai. You guys can hear me, right? Okay. So today we'll start about basics of advanced programming, Java. Okay, before we go into that, how many of you know a little bit of any programming language? Okay, let's interact, okay? Because if this is going to be a very complete kind of lecture, it is going to be quite difficult, at least in the beginning. So, how many of you people know any kind basic C? Okay, all right. So the rest of you are completely new to programming. Is that my understanding? Is it correct? Okay. Come on, guys, reply. That'll help me. Okay. All right. Okay. Python. Good. Tableau. Okay. 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 So those of you who know basic C, this might be a little bit familiar. For those of us who are new to programming, no worries, no problem. You don't have to know C or C++ or Python or anything to understand and start with Java. Now, don't get worried because I didn't learn C, C++ before I started learning Java. Java was my very first programming language that I learned, and it was easy. So if anybody tells you that programming is difficult, or I don't like programming is hard, you can learn it. You just need to know how to learn, what to learn, then you'll be a master of it. Okay. So before we go, so what are computer programs? Now programs are, by definition, they're nothing but a set of instructions that tell a computer or any machine what to do. So program is essentially a software. Got it? And so any app or tool that you use is actually a program. So program is a software, and any app or tool that we are currently using, any app that could be your Facebook or anything, is actually a program. Okay. Next is a programming language. So now, I was just telling you that program is a set of instructions that tell a computer what to do. So what are computer programming languages? The set of instructions that you're going to give the computer, right? That is programming language. How do you define those set of instructions? That is programming language. Now, programming language is nothing but a human readable way of giving instructions to the computer. So programming language is like a bridge between our human thoughts and our machine understandable code and computer. So programming language will is how you explain to your computer what to do. Like it is like different languages, different normal human languages. Like for example, if I suddenly start talking in Spanish or maybe in Tamil also, some of us won't understand. Similarly, our normal language a computer will not be able to understand. If I say count to 5 directly, the computer will not understand. But if I say in a particular way that the computer can understand, then it will be able to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is what programming language is all about. So programming language, there are different types of programming language. Let's look at the basics of what is programming language, then we'll jump into Java, okay? Programming language, there are two types, basically low level and high level language. Now, low level language is nothing but any language that is close to the computer language, okay? Now, computer language, or you can say machine language. Can you tell me what? Okay, I will. Okay. You want to see the previous slide? Okay. Yeah. Basically, programming language, like I said, it's just like any language, right? Any language like English or Hindi or Marathi, whatever. Even programming languages, even computer programming languages will have just a combination of symbols, words, punctuations, uh, and different, yeah, all these arranged in a particular format, which we call as, in language, we have grammar, right? Like even for programming languages, we call them as syntax. For example, if I say, I am eating, you understand that. If I say I eat, it does not make sense. Like you will understand it because we are human brains. But if you actually explain it to to another person who does not know English, they will not be able to understand what I'm saying, because I means me, my subject. Then I have to put a verb am, and then I say eating. You will understand. If I misplace the order of these words, you will not understand what I'm saying. Similarly, in a programming language, we have a set of rules: what words to use, how to use, when to use, what order to use, because each way you specify a word will have a different meaning. So based on those kind of syntax, the rules that they had for making programming languages, we classify the programming languages into two huge types, okay? Low level and high level. Now, low level languages are languages that the computer can actually easily understand. It is not human friendly. It is not easy for a non-expert or a person who does not know computer to understand the low level languages that easily. They need to have a special knowledge to understand low level languages. So, okay, can anybody tell me what is the language that the computer can actually understand? Any machine. What?
Zeros and ones.
Yeah, zeros and ones. That is on and off, right? The entire digital computer is based on and off, 0 and 1. So if you actually think about it, any and every application that we run, that is your Facebook, your Chrome, your video player, anything, will actually give instructions to your computer in zeros and ones. But can you imagine doing that? Like if you ask the computer to play a video and you have to say, give me in zeros and ones. I mean, like you have to give an instruction saying 0011000. How many? What? How will you remember it? But initially, programming languages and machine language was just zeros and ones. Now, machine language is the native language of the computer. Okay, so it is easy to understand for the computer. It's very fast in execution because there is no time delay for the computer to understand the machine language. But the only problem was not everybody can write the code. Okay, only specialists could write the code. Only if there was a problem in the program. Okay, now we are going to use terms like coding, program. Code is nothing but the set of instructions that you write. Okay, it was very difficult to find the error, because even if you place 1 0 in the wrong place, it was going to be difficult for them to find out which zero is in the wrong place or which one is in the wrong place, that the computer is misbehaving. It is not acting the way it is supposed to be acting. So it was very difficult for us to write many programs, especially with the advancement of the computers. It was very difficult to code in machine language. And also machine language, you will be hearing the term not portable or machine dependent, which means that we have different types of processors, right? Like we have Intel processor, or we have a Windows machine. Let's take a Windows machine and a Macintosh machine. If you write a code for the Windows machine, for example, it has to be a different set of instructions. For example, even if you say the computer to add 2 plus 5, it will be same 2 plus 5 for a Windows machine will be a different set of instructions, but for a Macintosh machine it will be a different set of instruction, or for some other machine it will be a different set. So you're asking the computer literally to do the same thing. You're asking it to just add two numbers, 2 and 5, but you have to give it in three different formats depending on the machine. So again, that was not ideal, right? Because addition is addition. Come on, it has to be simple. It has to be the same. So again, machine language was not so easily used and followed. So next is assembly language. So with assembly language, if there's any electronic engineers here, we would have used assembly language in a microprocessor labs, or even in physics lab in the basic addition in digital on and off switch and everything. So assembly language is again hugely machine dependent. It depends on different processor. Like an 8-bit processor means it is different. A 16-bit is different. Uh, but assembly language had an advantage because now they introduced keywords or mnemonics for corresponding languages. Like they started using words like move, add, sub, stop, jump, start. We even have halt, stop. Like you have to say start for the computer to begin following a set of instructions. Then you have to say assign a value, a is equal to b or something. It was quite complicated. For example, a simple code will be add 2 comma 3 and result, which actually means that add 2 and 3 and store the value 5 in result. So it was quite easy. Again, assembly language is also machine dependent, but it is also easy for the machine to understand, in a sense that you needed another translator, a bridge in between. Like I said, any language that is not machine language has to be translated to machine language for the computer to understand. So even assembly language, our computers or machine cannot understand. So we needed something called a translator here, assemblers, which translated the assembly language code that we write into machine language code. So, so now we saw what two low-level languages. We saw about machine language and we saw about assembly language. The next languages are a different breed of language. It was like the life savior for computer programming, the high-level languages. Now, the high-level languages have so much benefits in the sense that they are just like English. You can understand, I can understand. Suppose procedures, but once you know the basic of what kind of language you're learning, like once you know the basic of C, you will understand C. Once you know the basic of Java, now in future, you can easily understand what a Java program is trying to do. Yeah, Glory, I don't get the question. High level one slide. You want to go to the previous slide? Right now I'm in high level languages only. Okay, so again, high level languages, in high level languages like C, C++, we call each instruction, each step of instruction that we give is called a statement. Now look at the example I have given here. Result is equal to 2 plus 3. So it is quite easy for us to understand, right? Anybody can understand that. It's like solving a math problem. We know that now 2 plus 3 is a value that we store in result. It's just like a math problem. You can understand it, I can understand it. Even a person who does not know any language for that matter can understand 2 plus 3. Now, with respect to high level languages, you have to understand in programming languages in general, if you learn C, C++, whatever, the basic concepts are going to be the same. Okay. That is your variables, your operands, they're all the same. For example, if you look at the semicolon at the end of the statement, which means that is one instruction, which is actually similar even in C and C++ and even in Java and many other coding. The semicolon tells the computer that it is the end of the one instruction. Okay, one statement we ended with always with semicolons. Now, there were two kinds of high-level languages: procedural languages and object-oriented languages. Now, procedural languages. Okay, for those of you who told me you already know C, it is more like a top-down approach. You know, it's like following a recipe. You have to do it in a particular order, and it has to happen in that order. And uh, even the flow of data, in the sense you'll be using these terms, data, all of these. Data is nothing but any information that you need, that you will be processing. Like for example, here in result is equal to 2 plus 3. What is the data? 2 plus 3 is the data which you are storing in the result. So the data, everything had a particular flow. It was very procedural. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay. It was more about actually have like, what do you say, it was based on more like logics and functions. You have a problem, this is how I solve it, and that is the only way to solve it. It was kind of like that. Reusability of a code was a bit of a problem. Like I said, you have a problem, you devise a step of instructions to solve the problem. So reusing the same code for a different problem was not a big deal. That's just a general idea I'm telling, an overall idea. Is what we were using in object oriented programming. Now in object oriented programming, we moved from uh, concentrating on the steps to objects. Now you will be hearing this term objects a lot in Java. You'll be actually, object oriented programming is a more popular type of programming, C++ and Java. Objects are nothing but any information. It has information, okay, and so all this information and behaviors will be passing through using objects. So like every now we are in a world of lots of data, right? Big data, every information, data. You'll be hearing this term, big data. So all these data, so much data is there. So we shifted from steps kind of programming, concentrating on procedures and steps, and we started concentrating on how to handle this data. So that is where object oriented programming comes into picture, where object oriented programming has its own set of features like polymorphism, encapsulation. I know these all sounds Greek and Latin to you, but as we go on, you'll understand what I'm saying. So object oriented programming is nothing but it concentrates on how to use the data. It concentrated on what the data is. Like, it concentrated on data modeling, on how to do what to do with the data. It concentrated on the data rather than the steps of processing the data. It is also very secure in the sense that we will wrap the data. Security between procedural language and object oriented language. Object oriented language has a little bit better way of handling data, so it was more secure. Okay, moving on. All right. Okay. Now, like I said, we saw about different languages, right? We saw assembly language, we saw high level languages, like it could be C, C++, Python, Java, any language. It has to be, like I said, translated back to the machine language. Now, in order to do that, in order to do the translation of what the step of instructions that we are going to write in a particular language back to the machine language, we have something called language translators. Basically, we have two types, compilers and interpreters. I will tell you what each is. Now, compiler is actually another set of program. Okay, it's another set of program. You don't have to worry about what that program is or what logic is written in that program. But basically, a compiler translates the whole program into machine code. Okay, in the sense that when I say translates the whole program, you have to understand if the program has 10 statements, 10 steps of instructions, it will translate all the 10 set, okay, all the 10 together at the same time, and will give you an object code. Okay, it will give you an object code, that is your machine code. Now with compilers, you can directly run this code in the machine. Okay, you have to imagine it like it is a dot executable file. The compiler will give you a dot executable file, so you can directly run it in the machine. Now compilers are actually machine specific. Okay, if you compile a code in a particular machine for a particular machine, like for example, if I compile a code right now for my Windows machine, I can run it only in my Windows, because the dot executable will be for Windows. You would have noticed this every time you try to download a software, right? Every time you try to download a software, Chrome will ask you whether you're using a Windows machine or whether you're using a Macintosh machine, or are you wanting to download this for an Android mobile application. Because for each kind of device, the .executable file is different. Okay, like I cannot run a .executable file that is a code that is meant for Apple machine. Get it? So compilers are nothing but the translate a set of instructions, that is your high level language, into a machine level language, and they transfer it all at the same time. And at the end of the execution, after translating everything, after translating all the 10 statements, after that, it will tell you if there is any error or a mistake in your code. Okay, now latest compilers will all tell you if your code is wrong. It will tell you if you have made a mistake in your code. Now, when I say they will give you an error report, it does not mean it will tell you that your logic is wrong, but it will tell you your syntax is wrong. How can I explain this? Suppose if I'm asking you to write an essay about your day, you can write whatever you want. And you can even tell me about, if I ask you to write about a cat, and if you write about a dog, it is wrong, but only if you read through it will know. But the compiler, but if there is grammar mistakes, if there are grammar mistakes in what you write about it, that the compiler can catch. Okay, what I mean is it will not handle any logic mistakes, but it will tell you any syntax mistakes. Syntax is syntax is like the grammar for the programming languages. Okay, that your compiler will tell. So what they mean by compilation is slow is that you have to wait. Suppose there are 1,000 lines in your code or 10,000 lines in your code, or because as you start writing coding, you will understand that when I say 1,000 lines of code is not a big deal. It's not much. If you want to do a particular job, you're writing a program to do a particular job. 1,000 lines of code, 10,000 lines of code it's not much actually. So it has to compile all those 10,000 lines, and then only to tell you what is wrong with your program, and you have to wait for the compilation. But once you compile the code, every time you can run it instantaneously. Okay, you don't have to compile it every time. Once you compile it, one time compilation is enough for your code. Now interpreters are like single line translators. Okay, they translate instruction by instruction into your machine code. So interpreter does not give you a final machine code. It will not give you a final, it will not generate a .executable. That is what I mean. So every time you have to, if you want to run your program, every time it will read and execute, read and execute, read and execute. It just translate immediately and execute. But a compiler is different like that. The compiler will first read everything. Okay, it will translate everything into something the machine can understand. Then it will run that code into the machine. But an interpreter is like, it will read line 1, execute, read line 2, execute. So immediately if in line 3 it faces a problem, there is some syntax error or some mistake that you have done, it will immediately stop the execution there. That is the difference between interpreters and compilers. So because we are interpreting every line and it has to translate every line individually at a time, interpreters are using interpreted code is actually slow. Okay, because it has to translate every line. The time delay is a little bit, okay, when I say this, for human mind, it is not easy for us to understand the time delay in computer language, but it is slow. You can imagine it, right? Instead of me translating the entire code and then executing that instantaneously, I have to read every line at every time I'm going to execute. I have to read every line, translate every line, execute. There is going to be a time lag. So interpreted code is actually slower than your compiled code. Yeah. So like I was explaining, so the compiler, like I said, you have your source code, any code that could be C, C++, or your Java. You do some pre-processing, the compiler does some pre-processing, and then you get the machine code. Now this machine code, you can run it in any computer. For example, if you have this machine code for Windows, I can take this machine code and run in any Windows machine. Okay. But I cannot take the machine code for Windows and run it in the Apple machine. That's what I'm saying. Now, how interpreter works. With interpreter, you need to have your source code every time you are going to get your output. What I'm saying is, in compiler, you can just use your machine code and then run it in future in any other machine. But for interpreter, you still need your source code because it is not saving the translation anywhere. Okay, it is going to keep translating every time on its own. So you need your source code. It does not store your source code into a translated code anywhere. The difference between a compiler and an interpreter. Next, we are coming to Java. Okay, so now what was Java that we saw now? Okay, give me a minute. All right. So Java is one of the most popular and like high level, powerful, general purpose programming language. So Java is almost there in many devices. Okay, all most of your applications that you use run on Java. That's why Java, though it is one of the kind of an old programming language with lot of, they say it is difficult to understand Java because its rules and syntax are not very difficult, but it's quite complicated. But once you get the hang of it, it is easy. It is like when you start learning a new language. Now, if you start learning anything as a new first time, it is going to be difficult. But once you start practicing it, once you start learning it, it will be easy. So Java was first developed by Sun Microsystems by a group of people, by a team that was led by James Gosling. It was released in 1995, and then Oracle bought Java right now. The company Oracle, which is people who learn Tableau and everything, they will know that Oracle they have a database software. They are good in that. They are excellent in that actually. So Java is now owned by Oracle. It was first called as Oak, and then they named it as Java. So the latest version of Java is that was released a couple of months before Java Standard Edition 16. Now you see here something called Java Standard Edition 16. What we will be studying in general is Standard Edition. We have another kind of edition called Enterprise Edition, EE, and then Micro Edition, ME, for mobile devices and everything. But even across these editions, that is your Standard Edition or your Enterprise Edition, the basic concept is going to be the same. And don't worry when you say that because you know Java 7 or you know only Java 8 or you only know Java 9. I'm talking about versions here. It doesn't mean that you will not be able to understand Java 16 because the basic concepts are always going to be same. The different versions between each Java release is that they find that they can tweak some features, change some features, make it better, but it is going to still do the same thing. So if you learn one Java version, I'm not saying it is enough, but it should help you understand the other versions. It's like an upgrade, like adding new words to the library. Like if in 20 years back, if anybody told me I am Facebooking or I'm Googling or I'm pinging or I'm tweeting, no one will understand what it is, right? Because we don't know what tweeting is. We don't know what Googling means. We actually made a verb out of a noun, a Google. So if I say now Googling, everyone will understand what Googling is. Similarly, like that. Each version will have a different set of different features, just a tiny change, a tiny upgrade between each versions of Java. But the basic syntax, the basic set of rules, the basic keywords that they're going to use will be the same. Interesting fact, actually, Twitter uses a Java-based architecture, and which they shifted to Java-based architecture when Twitter became a hit because they were not able to handle so many tweets per day. So around right now, Twitter has 400 million tweets per day on an average. They shifted to Java-based architecture, which enabled them to do that. Our Netflix is also a Netflix application. You know, the entire Netflix is also based on Java code architecture. Right now, Oracle the company Oracle that owns Java estimates that there are about 3 billion, more than 3 billion devices, mobile devices that use Java. Okay, so Java may look like it's an old program because 1995, that's approximately 25 years back. It might look like it's an old language 25 years back, with all the new languages coming up. But Java is wide. It's an ocean. You can do so much with Java. And once you know Java, every other language is going to be easy. Okay, it's like you'll find every other language. Python, yeah, you'll find it like, how can I say, like eating cake. It'll be easy for you. Okay, now we'll talk about the key features of Java. Like I said, Java is object oriented. Now again, you'll be hearing this term again and again. I'll explain what object is in later. We'll understand what object is as we start seeing about the syntax and start working on it. Next, Java is platform independent. Okay, Java, I'll explain to you platform independent, what is architecture neutral in a few minutes, and even robust. Java is very simple. It's very simple. In a sense that it's very easy to understand. Once we start actually developing code, you will understand that it's just like English. Okay, it's very easy for me to understand. I write the code as a programmer. It is very easy for me to understand. And even after that, if somebody else reads my code, it is easy for them to understand. So Java is quite simple. And Java is also secure. You know, why it is secure is, maybe if I, Java does not run directly on your machine. Okay. For okay, maybe I'll explain to you how Java works for you to understand the key features of Java. Okay. Okay. Before we start talking about the key features of Java, remember how we talked about compilers and interpreters, right? We talked that the high-level programming language has to be converted uh, to a low-level language. The high-level language has to be converted to a machine code. But Java, like if you look at here, it says something called platform independent or architecture neutral or portable. What here essentially we mean here is, now you have something called your Java source code. Java source code is nothing but your Java code that you will be writing. And then you have a Java compiler, which will translate the Java code that you are writing into something called a Java bytecode, a dot class file. You will be hearing these terms frequently in the next classes. A dot Java file, any file that you save your code, the code that you write for even addition of two numbers, add a plus b or add b plus c, whatever, that is going to be your source program. You call it as your source program, or you will call it as your source code. That will be your .java file. Now, once you write this code, you have to compile the code, right? I told you we have to compile it. We have to translate any high-level language back to its machine code. So the Java compiler translates the Java code into something called the Java bytecode, which is a dot class file. Now, remember I told you that in order for the machine to execute any code, it has to be a dot executable. But like I said, Java bytecode is not machine code. It is not exactly a machine code. It's a dot class file. What I mean here is Java bytecode is actually an intermediate translation. It's like a half-baked bread, like between your source code and your machine code. It is an intermediate code between your source code and your machine code. You have to understand this when I explain the next thing. Now, there is another concept called JVM, Java Virtual Machine. Okay. Now, your code will run only inside your Java Virtual Machine. So, your Java Virtual Machine is what essentially translates your bytecode into an executable format and gives you the output. Okay, so when we say here, now understand there is .java, there is a dot class file, which is not machine code, but which is actually an intermediate code. This intermediate code will run inside your JVM, and that is how you get your output. Okay, so Java, when we here say it's platform independent or it is architectural neutral, what I essentially mean here is I can write my Java code in my Windows computer. I can write it, I can write it, and I can use it even in my Apple computer. Okay, so Java is basically like write once, run anywhere. You just have to write the code once and run it anywhere. Remember, we saw in some high level languages and some assembly language, and that they are all machine dependent. That if I write my code for a Windows machine, I have to use it only in Windows. I cannot use it in an Apple machine. But Java is not like that. I can write a set of programs for my computer to run, and I can run that same program in my Windows machine. I can also run it in my Apple machine. How is this possible? It is possible because we are not converting our Java code directly into the machine code. We have an intermediate called the bytecode. Now, this bytecode, I can move it anywhere. I can uh, run it anywhere. Like I can even send that bytecode, the .class file over the internet and run it in a different computer. So I don't have to have my source program in that particular machine. That is, I'm talking about, let's take an example of Windows and your Apple machine. Okay, so I don't have to have my source program for my Windows machine separately. I don't have to have my source program for my Apple machine separately. I can have only one program and I can run it in both the places. How is this possible? It's because of the bytecode and your Java virtual machine. We will talk about what Java virtual machine does in a few minutes. So essentially, that's what they mean, that it is platform independent. I can run, I can prepare my code once and I can run it anywhere. And architectural neutral, again, I can run my same Java code in a 36-bit operating machine and a 32 and a 64-bit operating machine. I can run it in Apple, I can run it in Windows, I can run it in any kind of processor I want. So it's architecture neutral. And what do they mean by portable? Portable, as an English word, it actually means that you can carry it anywhere. Ability for a program to run in a different platform. Now you will be okay. First of all, what do I mean when I say platform independent? Platform is your machine. Okay, platform. What I mean is platform is the machine where you run your softwares. There are different platforms. You even Java is a platform sometimes, and then Windows is a platform. Apple is a platform. All of these are different platforms. So that's what they mean platform independent. I can run it in any platform. I can run it in any kind of machine. Then Java is also high performance. Why is it high performance? High performance because it's very fast and efficient, because you don't have to compile your code every time. But again, there is a different concept of high Java's. Wait, let me gather my thoughts. Give me a minute. Okay, before I'll explain to you why it is high performance, what it means by an interpreted language, what it means by distributed language, what it means to be a dynamic language, after I explain to you how the JVM works. Okay. So basically, what they're saying is Java is one of the best languages here. There's a concept called multi-threading. Multi-threading in Java essentially means that you can run different programs at the same time. Okay. For example, there is something you want to add a set of functions add two numbers, multiply two numbers. Similarly, at the same time, you want to send a file to a different computer. You want to send an email. You can do both of them simultaneously. You don't have to wait for your addition to complete for you to send your mail. I can do it both at the same time by a concept called threading. We will be learning threading, all of these in detail in the future, in future classes. They also call Java secure. You know why Java is secure? Because your code is not actually going to run in your machine directly, but it will be running inside your JVM. The bytecode that you run will actually be running inside your Java virtual machine. So inside Java virtual machine, it is not easy for other processors or other computer programs to interrupt your code. So it is kind of secure, right? It has its own environment. So your code will be running inside your JVM, and without JVM's permission, no other process or program can interrupt your code. So it is kind of secure. It is not vulnerable easily to any other attacks. Distributed, what do I mean by distributed? Again, distributed is nothing but which correlates with platform independent, portable, uh, architecture neutral. Like I said, you can take your class file, your .class file, you can send it over the internet, you can run the program in my computer, you can run it in a different computer. Java also has an idea that suppose you have a very big application, a very big program. Imagine that you are having, okay, let's take a grocery shopping list or something. Okay, you have a set of instructions on how to place an order, how to calculate the total amount. How much does one water bottle cost, or how much does rice cost, or your ghee cost, or your oil cost? That information you don't have to have. That information maybe some other computer is having. This is what we call data or database. uh, it doesn't have both of them. That is your set of instructions to calculate the total for your grocery shopping list, and the actual value for each item that need not be in the same computer. It can be in different computers. This is how the new world computing, new computerized world actually exists. What I mean is to say that one instruction is in one computer, another instruction is in a different computer. I can use both the computer using Java and get my output. Am I clear? Because you guys understood that, right? If you don't understand anywhere, stop me, put your hand up or anything, and I'll explain it again. Okay, what it means that I can divide my code. If I have maybe 10,000 lines of code, yeah, if I have maybe 10,000 lines of code, I can separate it and execute it. This is again possible because of object oriented programming. In Java, we have this concept called modules and classes. Each work that you do is separated. So addition will be separate. Getting the value for each product will be separate. And actually getting the value for each product is actually in the database. That can be in a completely different computer. You can access all of this across different computers. That's what they mean by distributed computing. That's what this term means, distributed. And dynamic, again, see, dynamic is because suppose your grocery amount, I'm just giving you an example. Rice can be 10 rupees today, tomorrow it can be 15 rupees, for example. This data will keep changing then, but you don't have to change your code for that, right? You can directly dynamically take your data. You can ask your Java every time you calculate how much rice is bought today it will be for 10 rupees. Tomorrow Java will go and ask the database like how much rupees it is, and then it will be like 15. You don't have to hard code the values, your data values, into your Java program. That's what I mean. Java can handle lots of dynamic data. You will understand what dynamic data means, static data means, hard coded means, everything as we start working on future programs. But right now, that is the idea. Your price keeps changing, but your code is going to be the same because it can handle lots of dynamic data. So next is Java internals. I think it's almost going to be one. Give me another 10 to 15 minutes. We'll finish at least what Java is and how Java works. So next is Java virtual machine. Now, Java virtual machine, by the term virtual machine itself, it means it is going to be a machine inside your machine. Okay. So in order for you to run your Java programs, you need your Java virtual machine. Like I said in a couple of slides before, you need your Java virtual machine to run your Java code. So Java virtual machine is essentially like a machine inside a machine. So the Java compiler compiles your Java code into your class code. Now the Java virtual machine your Java virtual machine cannot understand your source code directly. Okay, it can understand only your bytecode. And then the Java virtual machine converts your bytecode into the native machine code. So you have to understand here the JVM for different machines will be different. For my Windows, it will be a different JVM. For my Mac, it will be a different JVM. But as long as you have a JVM, you can run any Java code in your computer. That's what they mean. That's what makes Java portable, architecture neutral, and platform independent. All of this is possible because of JVM. Now, if you look at JVM, JVM is actually an interpreter. Remember when I told interpreter has line by line execution? It translates every single line of instruction to the machine code. That's what JVM essentially does. So if you look at it, you might think that I was talking to you saying that interpreter is actually a little bit less efficient than a compiled code or a compiler. But Java is not like that. You know why? Because Java has another new concept called just-in-time compilation. The second box that you see, JIT, just-in-time compilation. What JIT does is essentially instead of instead of reading each byte code line by line, it will read a bunch of code together and compile it into a machine code. That's what Java does. So it's essentially an interpreter, but with the new feature, with the feature just-in-time compilation, it is fast and efficient. That's why it has high performance. So now it is almost like you have a compiled code and it can run easily anywhere. So Java's that's why you call Java as a high performance. So like I said, JVM is different for each machine. Like once you have your bytecode, you can take the same bytecode and run it in a Linux platform. You can take the same code and run it in the Windows platform. You can take the same one and run it to your Mac platform. What I mean is the source code is going to be the same. Okay, because you don't have to change or write a different set of instructions every time with a different format or anything for each machine. You can just write, it is going to be the same. You just need your bytecode. You can take that bytecode and you can run it anywhere. Next is your Java runtime environment. Now, Java runtime environment is essentially JVM plus a set of libraries and other files. Now, what do I mean by libraries is Java has certain inbuilt programs that do a set of tasks. Like we have concepts called string libraries, SQL libraries, all of these we don't have to write the code every time for all of these work. Okay, for addition you don't have to write the addition. If you just say add, it will add and give you. If you have, imagine you have to write the code to how actually addition performs, it is going to be difficult. But we already have certain packages or libraries that Java already has. Okay, that we don't have to redo it. That is what a set of libraries jar means. uh, so library is essentially imagine like a library. You don't have to do it. You already have the code written there. You just have to use your code there. You call them as jar files. Okay, Java archive files. You just need to, we will be learning about how to use jars, how to use other packages or inbuilt code in Java. We will be seeing it in future. So this is your Java runtime environment. Now imagine your Java runtime environment. Remember I told you bytecode. You know, if you are only going to run your Java application, you're not going to develop your code. You're not going to write code. You're not going to write a program. You're only going to run a program that somebody else developed. JRE alone is enough. Only JVM is enough. JVM and a set of other files, libraries, is enough for you to run a Java application. To run a Java application, that is any application by just JRE is enough. But if you're going to develop, code, if you're going to write code, you're going to write and then work on it, then you need something called Java Development Kit. A Java Development Kit is nothing but your JRE which will already have JVM with it, plus tools for compilation, which is nothing but your Java compiler. We were talking about, right? The source code has to be compiled. Java compiler compiles it into a Java compiler compiles it to the bytecode, and then the bytecode will be translated by your JVM, and then that will be executed by the machine. So to only run your Java code, only to run a Java application, or to only run your, suppose you are writing some application, okay, you're writing some addition of two numbers. You are writing that code, you're saving that code, you're compiling it to a dot class file, and you're giving it to your friend for him to use, him or her to use. In that case, they do not need your JDK. They do not need tools to compile the code again, because the code is already compiled. In that case, they can just directly run it using your JRE. But you, who wrote the code, who actually wrote the source program to add two numbers, to subtract two numbers, do some calculation, you need Java Development Kit. So Java Development Kit is nothing but it comes with compilers, archivers, debuggers. Now, what are debuggers? I saw what our compilers are, right? And archivers is nothing but compressing your code into. Remember, I talked about libraries, that is archivers. Making your code into libraries, that is what archiver does. You can do it. And then debugger, by the word bugs. How many of you have suffered with bugs, like in your code? Something goes wrong, the program stops executing. So Java Development Kit has inbuilt debuggers that help to tell you that where you made a mistake, this is where the mistake is, what is the mistake, how to rectify the mistake. That is what debugger essentially does. It tests your program. It sees whether what code you have written is correct or wrong. That's what your Java Development Kit does. So together, all of this, your JVM plus your class libraries, plus your development kit, the compiler, debugger, Java document, key tools, all of this are development kits. All of these together is your Java development kit. Okay, next is your environment setup. Now, for those of you who want to start, who have computers and want to start learning Java, all you have to do is go to your oracle.com and download Java from here. Okay, I already have Java installed in my computer. Yeah, I already have Java installed in my computer. If not, you can go and have it with your Java development JDK. You can click this. Copy. Show you. See, your JDK download. Always remember, when you download for working on Java, download JDK. JRE alone is available, but always download JDK. Okay. If you give JDK download, it will ask me which environment. See, for Linux, it's a different set. For Windows 64, it is different. Everything, it's different. Once you install your Java, you will have to set up something called environment path, which I will maybe will look at to it in the next class in a little bit detail. Setting up environment paths and all of that, you can find it online. You can find it and you can use it. Next is something called integrated development environment. See, for you to write a Java code, you need something where you can write the code, right? You can use your own notepad. If you're going to download just your JDK, you're going to download JDK and use means you just need your notepad. You can type your code in your notepad, you can save it in your notepad, and you can use the same to execute it. But again, when you type a code in notepad, who will tell you if you're making a mistake? Right? Who will tell you if you make it? Like I said, there are rules that has to be followed. So if I make a mistake in my code, I forget to put the same code that we were following. If I forget to put a semicolon, no, instead I put a colon, it's actually a mistake. But you will, if you write it in notepad, you will not be able to identify it that easily, correct? You will not know. You'll be looking at it, you'll be thinking that it is a semicolon, you'll be wondering why my code is not running, why my code is not running. It is difficult to write and maintain your code using a normal notepad editor. You can have different source code editors. Like I have in my computer something called Visual Studio, which is actually a code editor. I can write Java code. I can write, I'm actually working on some Angular projects. I can write a HTML code in my source code editor. Depending on what type of file I'm saving, it will give me it has code editors like Visual Studio. They are nothing but uh, an extended version of your notepad. Okay, they have some keywords. They will help you identify if you make any mistake. They will tell you that you missed your semicolon, that you have put a colon instead of a semicolon. Yes, we have online compilers for Java. You don't just need for people who have laptops, I will suggest try installing Java and try working out, because that will help you. Okay. Though there are lots of, you will be using advanced development environments. First, initially try to learn the basic fundamentals using JDK environment. Okay. But even I will be using a development environment from next class. You can either use a code editor plus your JDK. Your code editor plus JDK is enough for you to run a program. It is actually very enough for you to run a program. Or you can have something called integrated development environment, which is nothing but all of this, your code editors, your debuggers, your help and other tools, all of them will come inbuilt. I have been using Eclipse for a long time, so I'll be using Eclipse. uh, there are other options like NetBeans, IDE, BlueJ. And for those of us who don't have a computer yet, I am very sure that there are applications, apps available now that will help you learn Java coding. Okay, so install those apps, find out what kind of app suits your phone better, install them, start learning, start trying. First, install them. Before the next class, install them. If you have any doubts installing your JDK or your Eclipse, follow the default settings. There is no any particular setting that you have to do to install your Java. You download it, click install, it will install. That's all. That is all you have to do. Even for your Eclipse or your NetBeans, that's all you have to do. We will start working on an integrated development environment, because it is easy for us to code and see the output simultaneously by using your IDE. If you have another couple of minutes, do we have another couple of minutes? I'll show you how to execute using a code using code editor. Once we have a couple of more minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So if I type in my machine, it is, see, I have Java 9. Can you see my command prompt? I have Java 9 installed in my machine. So it is telling me what version of Java I have. Now, see, where is 9 and where is 16? Now Java version 16 is available. You can download any easy version that you get, download it and start working on it. I'll show you one demo of how Java works. See, you have to download your JDK and you have to set something called an environment path. Okay. I have not set my environment path, but I will temporarily set it right now. Environment path is nothing but telling your, right now my execution environment is my command prompt, right? What is command prompt? Command prompt is where you give commands for your computer to execute. It's simple as that. Instead of going and clicking your buttons, you give commands using your command prompt and your computer will execute. Now I have not set my Java path clearly. See, remember I told you will get two environments, JDK and JRE. I have both. Okay. Okay, set my path. Now a basic Java program will look something like, I close my Java program. Oops, I closed it. Should be somewhere here, should be somewhere here. Okay, close it. Give me a minute. Okay. Now this is my basic Java program. Remember, I was talking about class, objects, all of that. We will see in the next class, but this is one of a very simple Hello World program. So I have a program. I have a class called demo. I'm saving my file. Okay, I've just saved it. I made some changes, so I'm just saving it. So how do I run it? Remember when I said my is actually demo.java. I have saved my file as a .java file. So this is my source program. I'm going to compile my program now. So my program got compiled. See, now I told you demo.java, we will generate a .class file. I go to my root directory of where my Java demo file is. Can you see a demo.class file has fallen and it is called a class file? Well, demo.java is actually a Java source file. So for me to run the same program elsewhere, I don't need my demo.java. My demo.class file is very sufficient. I can copy this in a pen drive. I can go and take it and put it in another computer and run it. I don't need to have my demo.java program. That's what I mean. That's what we mean when we say platform independent. So now if I have to run my demo program, can you see hello Synergy Mahar? That's what I have written inside here. This is it's very simple. So this is how you will be learning to compile code and edit, debug, and see in your machines. So so again, to recap what we just saw, I have a source program. I wrote it in a particular syntax. Can you see the color variations? Public, class is in a different, demos in a different way, void is in a different color. Uh, there are, this is the syntax that you have to write a program. Okay, there are particular rules and syntaxes which I will teach you in the later classes. So I have made a basic program. I have saved it. I have compiled my program. The keyword to compile your program is Java C, and your file name.java. And then the next one, to run my program. So this is called compilation. Okay, Java C is called compilation. This is called execution. Java demo is called execution. So first I saved my program. This is where I write my program. This is called editing or writing my program. I wrote my program. I saved my program. I saved my file, and then I compiled my file. Once I compiled my .java file, I got something called a demo.class file. So now when I run Java demo, essentially what the computer is doing, not exactly my computer, my JVM, my Java virtual machine, exactly what it is doing is, it is running the demo.class file and it is giving me output of what I asked it to do. Hello, Synergy Maharashtra, which is what I've asked it to do here. Give me, print this word. I've asked my system to print this word. See, if you look at it, it's quite easy, right? System.out.println. All I'm telling is print this particular line. So that's what high level languages all are about. Once you know some keywords, some basic syntax, you can understand what the code is. It's very straightforward like that. Okay, I think that's it for today. Let's close here for now. So you guys understood what Java is basically, how Java works. Was that clear? Do anybody have any doubts? So Java is a very versatile language. Okay, we need JDK, JRE, JVM for our Java to compile and run our Java code. We will learn about, my lap has 2 GB RAM and I'll tell a simple Java, it should be able to run, provided when you are using your Java machine, I mean, who asked me this question? Arpit. When you're using your machine, provided you keep your other programs, it won't hang. Most of the computers come with installed Java. Okay, most of them come. If it is not there, you can install Java. Java is not going to take that much place. Your JDK will not take that much place, because you see, essentially I didn't do anything. I just used my notepad. I just used an editor. You can write the same code in your notepad. I just used a notepad and I used my command prompt. Both of this, you will have it in your laptop and you can run it. your laptop won't hang. It won't hang that easily. But if you download some integrated development IDE like Eclipse, NetBeans. In fact, for Eclipse itself, sometimes it might hang. And my laptop is old. My laptop is actually old and it has a lot of data. My RAM is full. I have to be doing some cleaning work in my laptop. But in other cases, there should be no problem in running a basic Java program for studying purposes in your laptop. For those of us, again, I told you, for those of you who don't have a laptop, search for applications, internet Android apps that will help you develop and code similarly to how you can work in your laptop. I will do some research and I'll get back to you with any other applications, any apps, mobile apps that you can use, okay, in the next class. I'm not exactly sure, Gloria, because this is my first time I'm taking a class. I expected to cover a lot of topic today, but so 1 hour, maybe another 6 classes, 5 to 6 classes. I'm not sure. I'm not giving you an exact deadline, how many classes will be there. I'm not sure, as long as it takes. So my estimate is another 6 to 8 classes, maybe. Any other questions? Yes, there are online compilers for your Java code. There are online compilers. You can compile your code online. If you go to Google and say Java online compilers, there are lots and lots of compilers that will come. You can code online in your internet using your own mobile phone. Even if you don't have any apps that you can download and use, if you have an internet, you can use your own Chrome to learn and study Java. If you're going to develop a full-based application, application is nothing but a set of programs that do a particular job and task, like what I am doing now. Like I have so many files. All of these files that I have, different files in different languages, like HTML. All of these is for an application. In that case, you might need an IDE. But to learn basic concepts of Java, you don't need an IDE. You don't need a computer. I mean, you don't need a computer and a Java environment for you to learn. If you have a good internet access, you can learn. And a computer with minimum data, you can learn. Okay, guys, I think that's it for today. Ivans, is that okay? Shall we end?
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. Thank